So today we will be discussing our programming. So we have already completed the discussion on aspect-oriented programming, what it is and how it is used. We need to write the program on that. So this is what we have discussed. That is, you are having the core service, payment service, and the miscellaneous service in your application. And for each of the service, you require the login functionality, you require authentication mechanism, and you require authorization. Why does what we say is the core service, payment service, and miscellaneous service. These services have the logging, authentication, and the authorization logic that is spread across. So this logging and authentication and authorization is called as cross-cutting concern. This is called as cross-cutting concern. So this is called as, and then okay, we have already discussed this was before AOP, that is the complete logic, business logic as well as the secondary logic. We have kept it in a method. Whereas once the AOP is applied, you will separate the primary logic from the secondary logic of the application. The one that is highlighted in the red color forms the secondary logic of the application, and one in the black forms the primary logic of the application. So the basic job of the AOP is to separate primary logic of the application from the secondary logic. The basic job of the AOP is to separate the primary logic of the application from the secondary logic. Because the secondary logic of the application is required at many places, we keep it in a separate class file and integrate it with the help of the XML whenever required. I repeat, because the secondary logic of the application is repeated at many places, we place the secondary logic of the application in a separate file and make use of it or integrate it with the primary logic whenever required, either with the help of the annotation or with the help of the XML files. So this is what we have done. Now let's say uh, over here your target method code, what you want to execute or what you want to do is you want to watch the performance. What you want to do is watch the performance. That watching the
Hi, Aatika.
Hi, Hassan.
Hi. Did you change the time?
No.
Actually, right now my time is 7:37. I am in CST because it should be like an hour ago. Class should hour. You were supposed to take class in CST 6:30.
Now what is the time at your place?
I'm in CST and my time is 7:38.
Okay, I think we have some because of this daylight timing. Okay, I think we have got some issue. We will just cross check this with Monica. She'll update you. Do you have any work now?
Okay. Sorry, no, I don't have any word.
Okay, with respect to this timing issue, okay, I'll just cross check with Monica and she will give you an update.
Okay. Are you feeling okay today?
Yeah, I'm fine today.
Okay. So you will take like a this time from now?
Yes.
Okay, so if you take like a my 7:30 CST.
Hmm.
Okay.
Now, the target method what we have is watch performance. That is, when you're watching performance, what you will be doing is silence cell phones, take seat, and then applause is after, like after you have watched the performance, you'll applause. If you don't like the show, then you may demand for the refund. Over here, if you observe, you have got three things: before, after, and if you don't like the performance. So before you watch the performance, you should silence the cell phones and then take the seats. Applause should be removed from here. And then okay, then you will watch the performance. After the performance is done, there are two options. Like either you may applaud, and if you don't like the performance, then you may demand for the refund. In either of the cases, what you will do is 3A is applause, and if then exception, like if you don't like it, then you will demand for the refund. Whatever it is, finally the message should go to the user. The message should go to the user. Now, similarly, if you have like if you want to eat the food, so what you can do is before you will wash the hands. Before eating the food, you may wash the hand, and after eating the food, again you may wash the hand. This is how it works. So cross-cutting concern. So in order to apply this cross-cutting concern, okay, we have got aspects. So we use aspects in order to implement the cross-cutting concern, and it is configured using annotation slash XML. It is configured using annotation slash XML. So what all we have is before, after returning, after throwing, in around. So these are the five annotations we have. So before is before the target method is executed, after is after the target method, after returning, after throwing. After returning is after the method execution is successful. After throwing is when it throws an exception. Around, uh, before and after. If you want the certain advice to be executed before and after the method execution, you will go with around. Now, let's say okay, you're having a class that is called as performance class. This and you are having a method called perform. Public class performance, public void perform system that does the println and start the performance. Now, for this class, you are writing the performance aspect. For this class, you are writing the performance aspect. That is the logic for executing, that is secondary logic of the application. You are writing it in an aspect. I repeat, secondary logic of the applications are implemented using aspects. So first what we want is, first advice what we have is silence the phones. Now if you see over here, before value, before. So when you want the cell phone to be executed, you want this to be executed before which method? Perform method. So you have to specify the name. So this method should be executed before the perform method. So over here start at the wildcard means you are not considering the return type, and over here you're performing the name of the method, that is com.example.aop. This is the package name, performance is your class, and perform is the method. So before the execution of perform method of the performance class, you want silence cell phones method to be executed. Clear with this?
Yeah.
And then take seats. So again, before the execution, you want this method to be executed. And applause. So you want this method to be executed after, at the rate, after value is equal to execution, perform XYZ. So before and after
So
advice.
before means like before load the class or before which or
Before the
from.
method is executed. It is not
So
restricted.
what will execute before
This
executed
one,
method?
put all the cell phones in the silence mode
Mm-hmm.
and then start the performance because you're calling the perform method, and after this
Mm-hmm.
perform method has been executed and it will execute this applause method. You don't have to invoke it, the system will do it by itself.
Oh, okay. So by annotation, it will recognize like which
Yes,
one will do before and
before, it is before the perform method and after. So
mm-hmm.
before the perform method, put the cell phones on the silence mode, public void perform. After the performance is done, then this method
Mm-hmm.
will get executed. Applause. System return println applause if you like the performance.
So is it a perform method is like a system method or we can name it any method, any name
It is a user defined method.
or user defined?
This we have already done, AOP interceptors. So generally what has happening is you want to execute the target method. You want to execute this target method. In our case, our target method is perform. We want to execute this perform. This is your target method, perform. But the perform method is not directly being executed by the user. Before that, we have got silent cell phone that is getting executed. Then you have perform, and then you have applause. Uh, Over here, your target method is perform. Your target method is perform. So before that, what happens is the system creates an AOP proxy object, and then AOP will call the advices. So over here, the advices what we have is silence your cell phones and then take the seats. After silence cell phones, after advisor calls silence cell phones and then take the seats, then it is executing the perform method. After the perform method is executed, again we are calling applause method. Then the request will go to the proxy and finally it will return to the caller. So if you observe this, caller is not directly invoking the target method. Caller is invoking the proxy. Caller is invoking the proxy, not the target method. And in the proxy, it invokes the interceptors. Proxy, it invokes the interceptors. And then forward processing of intercepted chain concludes with the invocation method on the target object. Okay, first, in order to work with the Spring framework, you require all these libraries. Aspect J, CGLib, Spring AOP, AOP Alliance, Aspect J Weaver. So these are the libraries what we require in order to execute with the Spring framework. Aspect
Hmm.
J, CGLib, Spring AOP, AOP Alliance, and Aspect J Weaver. These libraries you need to keep it in your Pascal.
Now,
Now let me just write a simple com dot example dot AOP1. Now our target so over here the method we are having is public void perform. Performance. So this is what we want. Now for this you are writing an aspect. Your aspect will contain the secondary advice. Performance. Your aspect will contain the advices. So if you want this to be considered as an aspect, annotate it. Now this is your aspect. Aspect is your secondary job. Aspects from the secondary job of the system. Then we said aspect is having the advice. So this is your advice. Public void uh, silence. System.out.println. Put your cell phones in silence mode. So once you're done with this, you should decide that this advice should be applied where. So you want this advice to be applied before the execution of performance method. So you're not concerned with the return type before execution. So start your specifying and then com dot example dot aop1. Your class is performance, and within this you have perform method. So where you want the advice to be applied, this forms the pointer. I repeat, you may have the method called perform, and let's say I have one more method called get ready. So system.out.println, get ready with performance. So we have got two methods. One is the perform method and the other one is the get ready method. But we are applying the advice only to the perform method. I repeat, we have got two methods over here. One is the perform method and the second one is get ready for the performance. But you are applying the advice only to the perform method. We are applying the advice only to the perform method. We are not applying any advice to the get ready perform method. So get ready for the performance. So the method to which the advice is being applied is called as joint point. I repeat, the method to which advice is being applied is called as join point. Is this clear? What do you mean by join point now?
So the second get ready for performance method will not execute during the call in AOP.
No, no, no. You have to call it explicitly. P dot get ready for performance. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
this way. Like you need to call both the methods performance. So when you're calling P dot performance, before
Mm-hmm.
this AOP proxy will keep what is that silence cell phones, and then after the method execution, your AOP is going to call applause because you are applying the advice. You're applying the advice. The method to which the advice is applied is called the join point. Now, whereas when you're calling this p dot get, but if you're calling this p dot get ready for performance,
Mm-hmm.
it will straight away just execute this get ready for performance. It is not going to apply any advices. It's not going to call this because
Oh.
from the aspect, it is being applied only to perform method. Clear with this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But if I don't call it, it will not execute.
No, no, no. This, if you're calling the perform method, then only. If you call the performance method, then this is
Mm-hmm.
added by the system and this is added. Silent cell phones and
Yeah.
applause is added by the system if you call the performance method. And get ready for
Yeah.
performance, it is a normal method. No advices will be applied to it. Only p dot performance to this method, p dot sorry perform uh, to this method is going to apply the advice. Clear on this?
Yeah.
So this is before, this one is after. Now let us write one more class, AOP test. before we write this, we need to configure it in the XML file. So let me just change the name of this. Now, all this configuration related information, you have to write this in the XML file, Spring file. So new, click on others, and then click others, Spring configuration file, AOP1, click next. What all packages I require is, I require just AOP. So click finish. You need to include the AOP namespace. And then for this one, this is aspect and these are your advices. So in this, first you need to configure the auto proxy. AOP colon. The system will recognize all the aspects and it will create the proxy objects. Because we are not creating any proxy object, the system is creating this. If you specify these, for each aspect, the system will create the proxy object and the calls will be made via proxy object. Now, next step, what you have to do is you need to register these classes, performance aspect and then the performance. So these two, we need to include this in the bean id is equal to performance aspect 1, and where it is located is on class. The fully qualified name is com.example.aop1 dot performance aspect 1, and the second bean what we have is bean id is equal to performance 1, and then class is com.example.aop1 dot performance 1. You are done with this. Check if there are any inconsistencies in the XML file. Check this XML and then validate XML. Now once you are done, then you will go back to this. Now you will read this. So load the file and its name is AOP1. If the file is loaded successfully, check it. If context is not equal to null, then it means the file is loaded successfully. In that case, what you will be doing is you will get the reference to the bean. Performance 1 p1 is equal to context dot get bean. So the name of the bean what we have given is performance 1, and performance. I think there was some spelling mistake. Let me copy. Save it. Go to this AOP1.xml. Okay, fine. Here it is correct. Let me copy this and paste the same in this. Now from here you will be calling this p1 dot perform. AOP1. Okay. Let us do a clean and build. Okay, here it should be this name. This was a mistake. Now let us execute. See over here you have got performance.
So AOP, we have to define the classes in the AOP1.xml, not the Spring XML or Web XML.
Yes. So over here this performance test, when you're calling this perform method, uh, this is performance. Hmm. You put your cell phones, start the performance in applause if you like the performance aspect. Why this is not getting executed? Click on this. Over here, I think there is some. Let me copy this. Performance aspect. So before and after, this is. Let me copy this name. Performance aspect. AOP1 we kept it. Now let us execute this performance test.
I
One, two,
think in
five.
that performance test one, can you go for a second?
No, it
Yeah,
should.
this is double E, right?
Which one?
And here also, yeah, per,
In this code you're saying?
mhm. Okay, I thought in the second page E is not there.
Which one you're saying? XML.
No, it's perform. It's a double E, right?
This is fine. This here. We have to create two.
Here,
That's it.
here should be performance aspect one, right? Oh no, it's XML.
This
That's
one. Uh, this is like user defined. It can be anything. Class AOP dot performance aspect one. This is fine. But why it is not getting executed? Oh yeah, this one you're saying.
mm-hmm.
1 minute. For this you should have. For, okay, it is saying illegal. Performance aspect. Okay, this is AOP1. That is the reason it is saying illegal. run the file. Okay, now see, put the cell phone on the silence mode, and then performance, and then around. Now, and then again, now let us execute around. Now, this is what we have. Now, for this, mm, let's say, okay, we are having a method called wash hands. Public void wash. So, system.out.println, wash your hands. So, we want this advice to be executed before and after the eat. So, let me just copy this format. So if you want to use this, then you can specify at the rate around. And over here, I'll just write eat. That is, in this class, you need to write a method called eat. Eat your food if I'm writing. I'll remove this perform and I'll just call eat. Now let us execute this. Wash your hands. Okay, what is that? Clean and mill. So you have got eat method. Now let us check this aspect class. Around execution, public void conflict and performance stuff. Eat fine. Wash your hands. Okay, this is getting executed. Where is the eat method? Only this is getting executed. Okay.
And I think in the main method, just you put p dot eat. Yeah. So here is a p1 dot eat method only. You should.
This is fine. It is calling around advice, but that is not getting printed. The advice is getting executed, the method is not being invoked. See, eat your food. This should be printed. Once that wash hands. Oh, oh, in none of the cases. Public void wash hands. Just hold on for a second. System.out.println. So we want this to be applied at the rate around, and the value what we want to give is execution of public void form dot example dot aop dot performance dot eat. Include the annotation and over here write a method called eat. And under performance test you will be calling eat. It is not calling this. This is not getting executed. Okay, let it be. I'll just check into that. Now let us move. So this is what is AOP we were discussing. Now point cut, as we discussed, it will specify where the advice should be applied. Where the advice should be applied. So let us discuss. Um, this is your building the web layer, Spring MVC. So in the Spring MVC, what we have is We have got a single servlet that is called as dispatcher servlet. All the incoming requests will come to this dispatcher servlet. And from here it will go to this handler mapping. It is similar to that of struts. From here, the handler mapping, it will pass on the request to the controller. Then it will return you a model and the view. From view, it will go to this view resolver, and finally, the view will be rendered. Now, this dispatcher servlet, it is based on the front controller pattern. That is, the Spring, it will provide a dispatcher servlet. All the requests that are coming to the web application will be handled by this dispatcher servlet. Now, what do we mean by this is, your dispatcher servlet will have some configuration file. If the URL pattern is X, the request should be handled by X. If the URL pattern is Y, then the request should be handled by Y. And if the URL pattern is Z, then the request should be handled by Z. This is what we have, X, Y, and Z. So this mappings, X to X, Y to Y, and Z to Z will be written in the handler mapping. Is this clear? The request will go to the dispatcher servlet. Now, based on the URL, the dispatcher servlet should decide who should handle the request. So, in the handler mapping file, we provide with all the configuration. X should be mapped to X, Y should be mapped to Y, and Z should be mapped to Z. So, this handler mapping will configure all the mapping information. Now, over here, X to X, Y to Y, and then Z to Z. So, the request of type X should go to the controller of type X. This is the controller. So, controller is a class that will handle all the user requests and give the response. So, controller is a class that will handle all the user requests. So, this will contain all the mapping, whereas your controllers, you will have controller X, and then you have got controller Y, and then we have got controller Z. Now, if the request has come for X, X to X, and then we are saying Y should be mapped to Y. Now, if the request has, if the URL pattern is X, and from the handler mapping, it has been identified that this request should be handled by the controller X. Now, if you observe over here, that the controller will transfer the controls, the dispatcher will transfer the control to that specific controller. The dispatcher will transfer the control to that specific controller. Now, this controller is responsible for processing the user request. This controller is responsible for processing the user request. After the user request has been processed, the output is returned to this. The output is returned back to the dispatcher servlet in the form of model and in the view. In the form of model and in the view over here till here. Now, let's say your model is something this. This is your model with some business data, and then you have got view. I am saying EV. I am saying EV, employee view. So this is just the logical name of the view. This is not the actual name. This is the logical name of the view. This is not the actual name. Again, the dispatcher servlet will send this information to this, wherein you will have EV means what it is. EV is, it should map to a servlet, a JSP page by .ev .jsp. So that is, it will have the fully qualified name of your class. Now, then the controller, it will call your actual view, that is ev.jsp, and finally the data is rendered onto the screen. Clear with this?
Can you tell me again that?
Okay, I'll repeat it again. Now, the request you are having, the URL pattern is X. Now,
Mhm.
this request will go to this dispatcher servlet. This request will go to the dispatcher servlet. Now, dispatcher servlet will call the handler mapping, wherein it will have all the configuration. So, X should be mapped to small x. And then you have got request of type Y. It should be mapped to Y, small y. where this X is a controller, sorry, this where X is the URL pattern and this X is a controller element, wherein you will have the business logic. This is a controller element. So now it will learn the dispatcher servlet with the help of the handler mapping has learned X should be mapped to a controller by name X. X should be mapped. The URL pattern X should be mapped to a controller of type X. So it will call the controller X controller. It will call the controller with name X. So the request will go to this, wherein this controller will perform all your business logic, let's say validating a user. So it will perform all the logic. And then it will return the model in the view to the dispatcher subnet. So a model is returned and the view. Let's say after the login has been successful, it should transfer the page to the home page, for which it is writing just HM. It is just writing the shortcut that is HM. Now this is the logical name of the view. Then it passes this request to the view resolver, wherein again it will have the mapping. HM should be mapped to home.jsp. It will have HM should be mapped to home.jsp. Now wherein this view is your home.jsp. Home.jsp. It will go to this view resolver, then from here it will come over here, home.jsp. Clear with this?
Yeah.
So this is life cycle of the request spring MVC. This will be discussing JDBC, but before that let us discuss the spring. So if you see, as we discussed, the dispatcher servlet is provided by the Spring MVC only. We don't write the code for the front controller, it is provided by the Spring MVC. That is, as soon as you are loading the application, servlet class is org.spring framework.web.web servlet. This servlet will be loaded, dispatcher servlet. So that will work as the front controller and handle all the incoming requests. Now, what type of request is this dispatcher servlet going to handle? What type of request is dispatcher servlet going to handle? So if you observe, this dispatcher servlet is going to handle all the requests of the type star HTM. All the requests that are ending with dot star HTM will be handled by the dispatcher servlet. I repeat, what are the type of requests that will be handled by this dispatcher servlet? So this will handle all the requests that are ending with the type star HTM. So web layer you have, service layer, and then the persistence layer. So your application context is divided into three. Your application is divided into three: web layer, service layer, and then the presentation layer. The web layer will contains all the user interfaces. The service layer will provide the business logic, and the persistence layer will provide the logic for storing the data into the database. Now next, what is context load listener? A context load configuration files loads context configuration files in addition to the one the dispatches servlet loops. We have got two types, and context load listener and context load servlet. And it is used when the web container supports servlet 2.3 higher and initializes the servlet listeners before the servlets. Now, for context load listener, you have got a file that is org.springframework.web.context.context load listener. For context load servlet, this is there. So in the context config file location, what we have is webinf slash trading data. So that is, it should load all the information from these files. It should load all the mapping related information from these files. So you need to write the controller class, and you need to configure the dispatcher servlet, that is training servlet, and you need to configure the view resolver. Now this is what your controller is. Home controller implements controller. So this controller will handle all your requests. So whenever the request is coming to the home controller, it will call this handle request method. Configuration. Now over here, if you see bean, name is equal to home.htm, name is equal to home.htm. That is, if the URL pattern is home.htm, then it should be handled by the home controller. I repeat, we set the dispatcher servlet in the training servlet. In the config file, you will keep all the related information with respect to the dispatcher servlet. So over here, if the URL pattern is star htm, it is going to call home controller. And view resolver, as we have said, it will contain, it is used for mapping the logical name to the actual name. The view resolver, and view resolver is used for mapping the logical name to the actual name. This will be done by the view resolver class. Done. So example on this we'll discuss tomorrow. So we have just discussed MVC, Spring MVC, wherein you have got the dispatcher servlet. This is provided by the Spring framework, and then the dispatcher servlet will contain all the mapping related information, and based on the type of the URL, appropriate controller will call, wherein the data is processed and model and view is returned back to the dispatcher servlet. After you get the model and view from the controller, view will contain the logical name. It's not the actual name. So view, you need to map it to the view resolver. Then again you'll return the control to the dispatcher servlet, and it calls the actual view, and finally the screen is rendered to the user, or the page is rendered to the user. As of now, okay, we did not do any program. I just want to know whether this diagram is clear or not, because our program will be completely based on this.
Hmm. Yeah, it's pretty much clear. Then I will read more about it.
Can you repeat?
It's pretty much clear. Then I will read more, so that I could be more clear.
Okay, fine. So we'll wind up for today. Again, tomorrow we'll meet at the same time, and tomorrow we'll start with the Spring MVC.
So tomorrow we will start at 7:30 CST.
Yeah.
And I think I have some questions. First, in the JNDI, we already complete, or it will come.
Can you be a bit
Uh,
louder?
it will become later. The JNDI
Huh?
JNDI topic is covered, or it will become later.
JND. Did we cover it in sublets?
It's in the sublet topic.
Okay, fine, no issues. We'll cover it. Not a big deal. I think I don't remember whether we have covered or not. Anyway, in Spring again we will cover it, and after that we'll cover Spring JDBC template. These two topics are connected.
Oh, okay. And what is the difference between the web server and the application server?
Now, and web server, it depends on the container. Your web server will have only container to execute your servlets, JSP. Spring also is executed in the web server. But whereas if you have to execute any application components, like if you want to
Mhm.
execute in EJBs, then you require application server. So your
Okay,
application
that's
server will have EJB container. So if you have to
mhm.
execute any EJB, you require application server. Whereas if you want to just execute servlet JSP, Spring struts, then you don't require application server. Web server is sufficient.
Oh, and what is the difference in web service and the shared service?
Web service as of now, okay, we did not complete.
Okay, so you will discuss later.
Yes.
And the starts we thought like that is starts one or starts two?
Starts.
Start.
Okay, okay. Now in starts, okay, we have got one and then version one and then version two. So version two, okay, has got many more libraries that have been added, and
Mm-hmm.
again, we are not using struts. Struts, they are used for maintaining the legacy projects new, because we have got Spring and Hibernate. Spring have got many
Mm-hmm.
more features than struts. So struts, okay, if you have got some maintenance projects, then you will be using struts. If in case if you have to develop fresh projects, then usually you will be going with the Spring. Any new
No,
contribution?
the example we see that one is based on start one or start two.
That was based on struts one. That was just a basic example.
Okay. And what is the MIME type in servlet?
Can you repeat?
MIME, MIME type, MIME.
Okay, mime type. So So when you say mime, M-I-M-E, it is for
Uh,
it is this one.
mm-hmm.
So in this,
Yeah.
it will help you. Mime type will help you to understand what is the data or what is the data that is there in the stream. So if I say text slash HTML, that is your stream contains HTML data. And if I say mime type as application slash PDF, that is your mime, that is the input stream contains the PDF data. And if I say image slash JPEG, that is your stream will contain JPEG data. So it is just to make the browser aware what type of the data is being sent from the client to the server.
Okay. So if we like a PDF or any other form JPG, so we have to define it like.
Yes, if you're sending HTML, then it is text slash HTML. And if you're sending, let's say you're sending some PDF file from server to the client, then your MIME type should be application slash PDF. If you're sending an image, then your MIME type should be image slash JPEG. So your MIME type should reflect the data that is being sent by the server to the client and the stream.
Mm-hmm. Oh, got it. Thank you.
Okay.
And today's video, I was just recording and some errors, so I lost it. So, how can I get the video for today's class?
Video for
I
this
mean,
class.
today's is it recording our
Yeah, it is
class?
on the recording mode. As usual, how we access the videos the same way this videos will be accessible. It is on the recording mode.
From where I can access it?
You have been provided with the Mindsmap login,
Okay.
so there you can
Yeah,
go
but
and you can access from there.
there are only slides are there.
No, 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 no. Video is also available.
Video also uploaded there.
Yeah, yeah. Videos are also uploaded there. You can just go to the site and you can and then check it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Aatika.
Okay, welcome. Have a good day.
You too. Bye. See you.